What you have just watched is what is known as Labyrinth, a gigantic film installation commissioned as part of Canada's Expo 67, a celebration of Canada's centenary in the 60s. While the work is projected onto 50 feet tall screens, what the audience perceive are 4 separate panels with moving images that correlate each other. The shot sequences from 2 separate films were edited so as to provide reflective images of a loosely structured, universal life story. Colin Lowe and Roman Quator's Labyrinth project is meant to transform the future of cinema and create a new medium free from convention of drama, story, and plot. As some scholars theorize it, multi-screen projections, like the one such as Labyrinth project, tends to end the storyline, as a symbolic poem ends narrative in verse. The Labyrinth project short-phrased itself from conventional and traditional need of drama, plot, and narrative.
That sings together.
Colin and Quator are not the only ones with such ideas. Prominent Hollywood filmmaker Nicholas Ray's fascination with quote-unquote mimage, multiple image, leads to him experimenting with the multi-screen idea in one of his last films, We Can't Go Home Again. The experiment results in a cacophony of images overlying on top of each other or running at once. 5 or 6 smaller images running at once within a 35mm frame, color extrapolated into garnished neons, faces and forms distorted. Similar to Labyrinth, Nicholas Ray wanted to capture the psychic and feel and look of the era. Different than Labyrinth, this experiment with multi-screen film is widely regarded as a failure, while Labyrinth is regarded as a successful installation. However, neither of them have actually become the future of cinema yet. So why is that? Is it because multi-screen cinema is ultimately an antithesis to traditional narratives and therefore can never be appreciated by mainstream audiences? Can multi-screen cinema invent its own mode of narrative instead of rejecting the need of narrative altogether? Ever since its inception, cinema has been challenging the ways in which visual narratives can be presented in terms of camera angle, camera movement, shot composition, and editing. The cinematic language is constructed in this ongoing process, but this exploration seems to usually take place within one screen, one panel, one huge rectangle. When films do explore multi-screen potential, the exploration is limited. For instance, phone call scenarios seem to be the most popular situation where multi-screen/split screen is used as a plot device. Time Code is one of the notable feature-length films that utilize multiple images throughout the entirety of the movie. Filmed with 4 synchronized digital video cameras in 4 separate locations. The story outlined in advance but otherwise improvised was enacted in a single continuous take, like a stage play, with the unedited images from all 4 locations presented on the screen at once. 4 frames of simultaneous action that alternately follow a smitten lesbian lover as she obsesses over her partner's dalliances, and the tense going-ons of Hollywood film production company. As a multi-screen media, Timecode ultimately did not gain a favorable review from critics as it does not hold a strong storyline. Indeed, the movie does more to paint a general picture of the Hollywood film industry than to construct a compelling plot. The camera angle used in 4 panels of sequence of shots are the kind of shots frequently used in a documentary film. The shot composition falls flat and plain, with a lack of focus on object or character. The audience will also have difficulties in relating to 4 separate sequences of shots together, as there's an inherent lack of correlations between 4 different sets of moving images. However, compared to the disastrous experimental film directed by Nicholas Ray, the stable formation of 4 panels within one screen allows for a more cohesive visual storytelling. That being said, the 2000 film is still overflow with information from 4 different narratives and is still very much a cacophony of moving images. Does this mean that average human consciousness just couldn't process the amount of images presented in a multi-screen cinema? Is it why such presentations of multiple screen cinema can appear to be so chaotic? It doesn't seem that way. Studies show that even children are able to process multiple channels of visual and sound in multi-screen cinema. Also, multi-panel visual storytelling, namely comics and graphic novels, have been around and widely accepted. So why wouldn't multi-panel narratives work in moving images? Especially considering that the formation of multi-panel, multi-screen in motion pictures has showcased that it's been influenced by comic narratives. The kind of narratives in comics and graphic novels is multimodal, which means that different modes are utilized in the making of comic and graphic novel narratives. In comics, the modes of images, words, and sequences constantly interact with each other as readers explore the page and make sense of what they see. The meaning-making potential of each mode can collaborate, reinforce, or question that of the other modes that enter this dynamic process. So what about comics that make its narratives easier to digest? The answer lays in its inherent static nature. It's true that your movement of eyes can, in a way, quote-unquote, animate the actions depicted in different panels, but the text bubbles, sound effect bubbles that are developed to structure narration and dialogues, as well as other visual cues in comics, bestow the static image a static audio quality as well. It's up to the viewers how they shall navigate a static sequence of images. The navigational structure of comics gives the viewer of comics the power to perceive the sequence of images however they like. At the end of the day, static images are always easier to process than moving images. Even though you cannot compare multi-panel moving images to multi-panel static images, I still don't think that it's impossible for multi-panel moving images to construct a narrative that is just as easy to understand and process. Out of all the films that effectively and creatively utilize split-screen or multi-screen to structure their narrative and plot, I chose a video game to illustrate my point. It may seem like a strange choice, but this video game titled Heavy Rain has absorbed all things cinematic and uses cinematic elements to its advantage, which proves itself to be a good piece of visual media to showcase. While Heavy Rain is praised for its immersive interactive storytelling quality, not a lot of people have studied its usage of split-screen and multi-screen narratives. The similarly fragmented screens actually piece together a fuller picture of what goes on in the game for the viewer. It effectively parallels relating action together, or narrative frame onto a specific action or happening that the audience/player needs to pay attention to as they decide the actions of the characters they are playing as. At times, the screen itself functions as a means of framing and connecting sequence of shots, as the screen itself limits your vision to what needs to be seen. This strong association between split screens and multi-screens is no stranger to cinema, but rarely does movies, especially feature-length movies, utilize split screen for the entirety of the narrative. Even Heavy Rain as a visual narrative only utilized split screen or multi-screen a few times during the course of the game. To me, one of the best films that have split screen in its entirety is a short film called Split Screen: A Love Story. While its usage of piecing two identical shots together as one image, such one screen, is not the most creative technique, nor does it offer the most insight to incorporating effective narrative to multi-screen films. However, it's important to know the strong correlation between twin screens and the organic embedment of split screen technique in the structure of narrative are what I consider as crucial elements in imagining the incorporation of effective narrative in multi-screen cinema. Split screen/multi-screen cinema is still quite experimental in nature, but the effectiveness of multi-panel narrative in graphic novels and comics, as well as occasionally successful visual media such as video games, makes me believe that multi-screen cinema does not need to be limited to experimental or niche cinema, and can expand the audience understanding of what new mode of conventional cinematic narratives can be. Films such as Split Screen: A Love Story and Time Code offer me a hope in which multi-screen cinema does not have to be antithesis to cinematic narrative. I hope that in the future, more feature-length films will present its narrative in fragmented screens in which different visually connected and engaging stories take place.